Welcome everybody to today's webinar, The Most Important Sale. So broadly speaking, there are three sales we make: the salesperson sale, the offer sale, and the company sale. And if the salesperson doesn't make the salesperson sale, you don't get an opportunity to make the next two sales, the offer sale and the company sale. So the offer sale is what you offer, and the company sale touches on risk mitigation, and those will be the subject of other webinars. In today's webinar, we're going to take a journey into the buyer's and to the seller's mindset, but particularly the seller's mindset. So, are you ready? Another way to frame this journey is to look at it as a journey to creating trusted advisor relationships. Let's say we're trying to win a new account. The incumbent vendor is seen as a trusted advisor. Are you? Initially, you may come in on a transactional basis. And so trying to sell this first sale, the salesperson sale, could be like kicking a soccer ball uphill when it's canted at 30 degrees like this. So what's our objective? Our objective is to come up with a strategy to level the playing field so that maybe we're seen as being on the road to a trusted advisor before we even do any business. So again, there are three proofs we need to make in the sale. The first and most important is the salesperson sale, that you are authentic, we are authentic and credible. Next is the offer sale. We have a specific solution to a problem, and there's an economic justification for it. And finally, the company sale, which is largely risk mitigation. Now, I've put a box around 2B, the economic justification, and the company sale. Those are areas that usually need some attention, and we will cover them at another time. But again, if we don't make the first sale, the salesperson sale, we're not going to get a chance to sell the offer and the company sale. And that's why it is the most important sale. Now, the selling takes place in 5 business development contexts. You're trying to sell a new customer, a new division, you're upselling or cross-selling. So perhaps the customer is cherry picking. We're trying to sell them new items. You're trying to increase your share of business. I don't know, let's say you sell cartons. You have 50% of the business. Somebody else has 50% of the business. You're trying to get to 75-25. That's business development. Or you're raising or defending your price. All of these things require selling. By the way, if there's a new decision maker, the recommendation is we treat it like a new customer. So what's in your personal brand? What makes us special? What makes each of us special? Stand out in the crowd so we can make that first sale, the salesperson sale. I want to draw on some wisdom from Jim Collins, the author of Good to Great. He talks about level 5 leadership. A level 5 leader is strong, competent, and humble at the same time. Good advice for making the salesperson sale. I took a 2-day webinar with him about a year ago, and he talked about this additional metaphor of the window and the mirror. So it's recommended that we approach life with the window and the mirror. What is this metaphor? Well, if things go well, we look outside the window and we give credit to the team, like it took a team to make and execute the sale. But here's the tricky part. If things don't go well, we look in the mirror and we ask ourselves, what else could we have done? Now, a dysfunctional approach is to reverse the two. So if we have success, we look in the mirror and say, wow, I'm great. And when things don't go well, we look outside the mirror and say, oh, it's not my fault. The price was too high, or we didn't have the right inventory. So it's a matter of taking ownership. Using the mirror properly is the opposite of learned helplessness. There was nothing I could do. Now, my personal standard, is I try to test out 2 new ideas a week minimum. And that's one of the ways that I win the salesperson sale. Let me give you an example of an application. I've been working with a client for 3 years, and the leadership decided they wanted to just focus on opening whales, major new accounts. That's all they wanted. So every week for 30 minutes, I met with each salesperson, and we worked on their 2 whales. Each of 16 weeks, if there wasn't progress, we invented something new. And by the end of the 16 weeks, we had about an 80–85% success rate in either getting new business or opening up materially new conversations, making that salesperson sale. And something else important happened by the end of this time. Everybody knew that there's always something else you could do. That's a very important part of the salesperson sale. So do you have a versatile personal brand? What's in your brand? Are you an idea person, a consultant? Are you a person who gets things done? Are you bold? My wife and I went to Hawaii a number of years ago. I think we were on the Big Island, and a guide told us that there are 14 climate zones in the world. And this particular island, I think the Big Island, had 12 or 13 of them. It was very versatile. And it made me think that there's an analogy when we sell to the salesperson's brand. There are so many qualities that are important in the salesperson's brand: to be authentic, credible, humble, to have integrity. We've started to talk about the idea person, and we will continue that conversation. Are you seen as a consultant, someone who can get things done? Do you aspire to and achieve being a trusted advisor? In order to do that, there are times when we need to be bold. And here's another important quality that aligns with boldness and being a trusted advisor. Do you help lead your customer into the future? There's a wonderful book called The Innovator's Dilemma, I think it's by Christensen, in which he points out that it's not enough to just do the traditional marketing approach, which is to find out what people want and give it to them. You also have to show them what the future looks like. And that's important to have in your brand as part of the idea person. And maybe a little bit of fun. What else should go into your brand? Now, if you would find it helpful, just as a reminder, as a guide, send me an email after this session, and I'll send you this table showing the elements that go into your personal brand. It's important to notice clues. Here's an example of noticing clues. My wife and I were hiking in the Montezuma National Wildlife Refuge, and we came to this bird observation blind, and we decided to go in it. Maybe we would see some nice birds. Now you'll notice on the ground there was some debris. Let's take a look at what it is. Looks like a mess. If we just look straight ahead or look down, here's what we would have missed by looking up. By looking up, we found there were 3 baby swallows in a nest at the top of this bird blind. Metaphorically speaking, when you sell, do you notice clues? Do you look up? In order to do that, you have to be a good listener, right? So you should be thoughtful, you should be listening, learning, and ideally embrace beginner's mind. What is beginner's mind? As I understand it, learning it from Eastern philosophy, when you approach something new, you approach it like a child without preconceived notions. These are important parts of your brand when you're selling. Now, here's an exercise you might want to bring back and do with the rest of your team. It's a listening exercise. Invite your team to just share examples of when they listened and noticed clues, and it led to breakthroughs. We've had some amazing, amazing stories told, which taught us all lots of great things about our business and our offering, when we did this exercise. Selling is a thinking person's profession. Now, a critical danger that could upset your brand is confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is malignant optimism. It's being surrounded by no's and unreasonably seeing a yes. A classic example for a salesperson, and you may have seen this happen, maybe you talked to somebody, came back from a sales call, floating on air, and that person said, wow, I just had a great sales call, I crushed it, and you're excited. You say, that's great. Tell me what happened, what made you say that? Say, they love me, they love me. And then you see that person maybe a month later and you say, hey, that call that went so well, how did it wind up? Said, darn thing, I could never get him back on the phone. Confirmation bias. You're looking for what you want to see. This is a bad thing to have as part of your brand. So I want to offer you an idea. Maybe you're already doing this. Two ideas. Look for the PIKs, the payments in kind. So watch your prospect's behavior to avoid confirmation bias. For instance, if they fill out a credit application, that's a behavior that probably shows that they're going to do something. So that's an example of overcoming confirmation bias with a PIK, a payment in kind. Might also be you're referred up to let's say the CEO of the organization. But as a brainstormer, a great idea comes from Professor Tetlock and Gardner, who were Tetlock's at Wharton University. He wrote this book, Super Forecasters, in which he has identified and shares with us the 10 rules of super forecasting. So super forecasters have way above average ability to look into the future. And of the 10 rules, the one I want to mention here is use the pre-mortem. Now, you know what a post-mortem is? When things don't go well, right? We try to figure out, like, why do we lose the sale? The pre-mortem is a question we ask while the sale is in process. And you ask yourself this question, why will we never close the sale? Why will I never become a trusted advisor? Why will I never make the first sale? That's the pre-mortem question. And then you brainstorm and you figure out what might go wrong, and then you attack it. Now you have different focus and climates depending upon your assignment. Let's say you or your team is on customer service. You might focus on these things as most important. And if you're a key account manager, maybe you would focus on these properties. But if you're doing business development, you probably need the whole enchilada. We throw fun in at the top. Again, if you're interested in getting this list, just send me an email after we're done here. Now, if you really want to be a good business developer, you have to overcome the tyranny of the or. Earlier, I mentioned an example of it with level 5 leadership. Are you humble or are you bold and dominant? Here's another example that sometimes undermines business development. Should we do customer service or should we do business development? Usually customer service is a little easier, it's more predictable. You know, with business development, we can face rejection, hang-ups, radio silence. So Collins and Porras wrote this book, Built to Last, in which they articulated that to be really competent, we need to overcome the tyranny of the or. And the way you overcome it is understanding that the situation requires an and. So great companies overcome this false alternative. Great salespeople in their personal brand, they do both. So your personal brand, let's focus on ideas for just a moment. And then we're going to show you a case history putting everything together. A salesperson, an idea person, the core of selling is that the salesperson's on a fall summit and he or she is going to take the prospect on a journey to a higher summit, to a higher level, a higher mountain of well-being. That's the core of selling. And the reason this is important to your personal brand, knowing that the prospect is on a false summit and we're going to bring them to a higher summit of well-being, the reason this is so important is because it fires us up. It's part of what makes us authentic and credible is our self-belief in the fact we could bring somebody to a higher level of well-being. As an idea person, as part of your brand, here are some things that we've talked about in other webinars. We'll talk about in the future, just a quick review. What kind of research are you doing? Do you understand and press on the customer's hot buttons? Are you bringing them valuable free information, right, with no strings attached? What's your proving, including testimonials? What's the economic justification that you do? What are the great questions that you ask? And it's also important to marry this with being bold. So we're going to look at a case history now of an idea person being bold and how that leads to a great outcome, even when you wouldn't think it would happen. So the question we're going to ask is, can you time pace sales? Can you make them happen faster in the dog days of summer when everybody knows nothing's going to happen? Let's look at this case history at a print company. We met the prospect at a trade show, and then a few days later, Sue, the buyer, sends an email to Bob and asks to do a quick phone meeting. But she says she's only interested in their traditional capabilities, and so this is a setup for a fire sale, to steal, to be a commodity buyer. So Bob, the salesman, wants to earn the right to a higher level meeting. So he sends in advance testimonials from Bank of America and Johnson & Johnson, and that sets up the ask. He asks for a go-to meeting. So here's his email to Sue, and he reflects back what she said she wants, but then he also says, number 2, let's talk about your most urgent needs, and I'd like to do a go-to meeting. This is the pivotal point in the whole interaction. And this is what could happen when you make the most important sale, the salesperson sale. So Sue writes back, a go-to meeting would be fine. And she also now says, and we could talk about other stuff, and this is no longer a fire sale. So Bob follows up. She wants some case histories. So here are some case histories that he sent in advance. Then Sue writes back, is there anything weird you've got? Now Sue is definitely going out of the box. This is really critical that she's willing to go out of the box because we're not in a commodity sale anymore. And this is because Bob has made the salesperson sale. So you kind of wonder, what did Bob do to this poor woman? So we wanted case histories, and she wanted more. So on the fly, Bob creates another case history and sends it along. And then in the dog days of summer, when everybody knows nothing will happen, Sue sends an email saying, can you pencil us in? And she's going to fly from California to the East Coast. In the dog days of summer, when everybody knows nothing's going to happen. So to set up the meeting, Bob asks in advance, how should I prepare? And Sue sends back this email saying, here are the things I'd like to see. Well, the planned trip went well, so they reciprocate. Let's plan to meet, and we flew out to the West Coast on the 9th, and in September rather, and we met out there. We had a great meeting, and after 9 months of back and forth, we finally received the first purchase order, and it's a $1 million a year company. Now, how did Bob time pace the sales process? Well, he moved himself. He went to the trade show. He made contact. He turned a 30-minute phone conversation into a go-to meeting. He was bold. He asked for it. And then he turned the focus from conventional printing only, which would have been a commodity sale, to our out-of-the-box capabilities, because he had sold his brand. He created new case histories. He earned the right to a plant tour. So what are some takeaways from today's webinar? What's in your brand? Are you a great listener, a noticer of clues? Are you competent? Do you know your product? Do you take ownership for the entire process? Are you bold when you need to be bold to become ultimately a trusted advisor? Are there any gaps in your personal brand, your selling brand? Write to me if you want the full list of attributes. I'll be glad to send it to you after our webinar is over. So I just have one last announcement as we're coming to the end of our webinar. We know Rome wasn't built in a day, so think about your takeaways, if any, from our webinar. Our next free webinar is September 15th at 10:30 a.m. And instead of saying the leads are no good, send me the Glengarry leads, our focus is going to be on 6 new ideas to open up new customers faster. Looking in the window and asking yourself, what can you do today to increase your sales, to make your brand stronger? Thanks for joining us. If you have any questions, please send me an email at andyg@urgencybasedselling.net. That's our webinar for today. Look forward to seeing you next month. Bye now.